Yes. What's happening, everybody? It's Wednesday night. Normally we do this on Tuesday night, but it is now Wednesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time. This Saturday, we have got UFC Vegas 82, which is going to be headlined by Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is going to be a very good card. There are 14 fights on it. There's some really interesting matchmaking. There's definitely a lot of short notice replacements. 2 fights just changed yesterday. We got Uros with a new opponent. Johnny Passons had to pull out, and he is now fighting Myktybek Oralbai. And then we got Christian Leroy Duncan's opponent, Cesar Almeida, had to have emergency surgery on Tuesday, I believe. And now he will be fighting Denis Tiuliulin. We've got 12 other fights besides those fights. And it's a pretty good card from top to bottom. I'm excited about a lot of these fights. And it's going to be a chance for us to bounce back after the absolute rinsing that I took last week at the hands of the bookies. Lost 6.47 units. Had some bad reads, but like some laughably bad bets, like bets that were made and there was good reason to make them at the time. And then it just turned out in ways that I just didn't expect it to turn out. It was a really rough week. So it's going to be a week that has to be a bounce back week. It absolutely has to be here. So I'm looking to maybe hit a couple of home runs here, and I'm looking to find the value spots, as I'm always looking to do, looking for those plus money numbers that are way too far on that plus money side and that give us a chance to cash. And that way we can stack cash tickets like flapjacks watching these fights that we love on Saturday. And also, on the bright side was we did hit the greasy 4-legger last week. So for those of you who tailed the greasy 4-legger, it was the over 1.5 rounds in the Van versus Borjas fight. It was the Vyacheslav Borshev money line, which was a push because it wound up being a draw. It was the under 2.5 rounds in the main event, Prochaska versus Pereira, and the under 1.5 rounds in the Aspinall versus Pavlovich fight. So it did cash for us. So that's pretty good, but I'll share my screen with you guys here, and we'll take a look at last week's bets because they were absolutely brutal. And it's always better when you can learn from somebody else's mistakes rather than having to make them yourself. So this is the accountability part of the show. We always do this every week. We tell you how we did last week, but it's on me always and all of us, if we want to be long-term winning gamblers, to learn from our mistakes. So let's find where they were last week. The straight money line bets were Matt Frivola plus 195. He got sparked in the first round. We definitely knew that was going to be a possibility. Frivola does not have the kind of durability that you want. That's why he's plus 195 in this spot. But if he can survive some of those shots and kind of get his way into the fight, land some big shots of his own, he is a guy that can absolutely surprise you at a big plus money number, but he wasn't even close here. So that was 1 unit down the drain. The Borshev money line, that was the ass shaving of the week. And it was the Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs or Parkin pick of the week. It wound up being a push. It broke our streak of something like 10 ass shavings of the week that have cashed in a row. Unfortunately, he won about 13 minutes of that fight, but Sadikov has got a brick for a head. I think he probably KOs about half the division with the shots that he was landing on Sadikov. And Sadikov landed a couple of big shots, which put Borshev in huge trouble. That we're lucky that fight didn't even get stopped, frankly. I mean, the way the night was going, I wouldn't have been surprised if that got stopped and we got almost reverse swept. Over 1.5 rounds in the Frivola Benoit Saint-Denis fight. I mean, not even close. Beat the number by a mile. He closed at plus 105. I got plus 145, but Frivola's durability let me down big time there. The over 2.5 rounds in the Emmers Bazookia fight, it's one of those things. I mean, like, Bazookia got 7 shades of shit beaten out of him for 3 full rounds against Melsik Bagdasarian. Never went down, never gave up, never even got dropped. And then he gets dropped by a guy in Jamal Emmers who has 0 UFC finishes, 0 UFC knockdowns, and a less than 50% finish rate as a pro. And not only does Emmers finish him, he finishes him in the very first round in less than a minute. So that over 2.5 rounds, that was a good bet. I would make that bet over and over and over again. The numbers loved it. Bazookia is supposed to be a durable guy. But I mean, it's pretty clear that Bazookia is a guy that has been at the right gym for a long time, but he's not even close to UFC level. But there's a lot of people behind him that want him to be, but he's just not. And, you know, he got exposed. He got finished by a guy that couldn't finish a glass of water in Jamal Emmers. Mark Madsen, scorecards equals no action. I got it plus 170. Jared Gordon just isn't a finisher, and I don't know what happened there. I mean, I don't know how Jared Gordon finishes anybody at this point in his career, but he managed to finish Madsen with one little short uppercut in the clinch, lost another unit there. Emmers by decision didn't cash because he finished Bazookia in the first round somehow. Fight doesn't go to decision for Kyung Ho Kong versus Castaneda. Got it at plus 180, closed at plus 130. Got a nice CLV trophy there, but lost the bet. Frivola by KO round 1 plus 900 for a quarter unit. Sprinkle fails. Ricci by decision at plus 220 for a half unit. Very close to cashing. Didn't quite get there. Sabatini by decision. The glass jaw of Pat Sabatini strikes once again. Man, it's a shame because him and Phil Hawes are guys that are really talented fighters, really good grapplers, but you touch them once and they die. And Sabatini, not even close to winning by decision. And then I had the Denis Bazookia scorecards equals no action at plus 178. So it was a lot of plus money numbers. But just the reads were piss poor this week. The bet that did cash, the biggest bet of the night of 3.5 units, was the under 2.5 rounds at minus 177 for Chaska versus Pereira. Both guys around 50% distance striking defense. Somebody was going to get served there, and they did. Down 6.47 units. I've got 4.1 units so far in tracked action. Now that props are starting to open up on some of the books that open fatter money line props, I'm going to be adding to this, and we're going to break down all 14 fights on this UFC Vegas 82 card so that we can all find ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks and enjoy watching these fights even more than we would if we were just watching them for the entertainment value. And if you want to support my work and get access to all the great stats that you see here on Just a Tip with your Uncle Weezy, that you see on Ask Weezy, that you see on Stat Diggers on Pub Sports Radio, join up at the link that you see scrolling below the screen here, patreon.com/Uncle Weezy. $5, $10, and $20 a month packets right now, or packages available to give you some great analytics to help you make better gambling decisions in the long term. This is the way that I can continue to show up for free here on YouTube, where we really don't make any money for showing up. So thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And let's get into this week after we see who is hanging out with us live here in the chat. 29 of you already live here, 8 minutes in. Appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to figure out some ways to get this money back this week. My guy Bob Spikermans is in the room all the way from the Netherlands saying, let's go. What's up, Bob? Good to see you in here. We got my guy Victor de Jesus in the room. Oi! Yes, what's up, Weezy in chat? What's going on, Vic? Good to see you in here, checking in from Grand Rapids, Michigan. We got my guy Dr. Kendrick is in the room. What is happening, Dr. Kendrick? We got Presidente Pedro in the room saying, oi! What's up, Unc? What's up, Pedro? Good to see you hanging out. We got Teron Brown in the room saying, what's up, Uncle? What's up is going to be my units after this week is over, because I've got some good reads and I've got some fat props that are sticking out this week that I'm going to maybe step on the gas just a little bit more than usual here for some spots that I just absolutely love. We've got Cage in the room saying, oi, what is up, Cage? We got Daz File saying, oi, 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 what is up, Daz? We got Litz in the room saying, Uros is a solid underdog here. That is nuts. Yeah, man. Myktybek or Oralbai takes this fight on 3 days' notice. He's going to have to make weight on 3 days' notice. And yeah, he's a big favorite. The people like him. The tape looks good. The level of competition, not necessarily Uros Medic's level of competition that he's seen. And the short notice actually makes it a pretty attractive price, because Uros Medic can just touch you once and the fight can be over. Dude, the Emmers KO seems unreal to me. the Jared Gordon getting a knockout seems absolutely unreal to me. I mean, I know that there were a lot of people that were saying Gordon was gonna get a finish via attritional ground and pound late in the second or in the third round, and I was like, that's bullshit. He's not ground and pounding Mark Madsen out of there. He doesn't finish anybody at the UFC level, with the exception, I think, Michelle Quinones. So yeah, the Emmers KO, unreal. Jared Gordon getting a first round KO, absolutely unreal. He's never even landed a knockdown in something like double-digit UFC fights, man. We got my guy Pepe Silvia is in the room. What is happening, Pepe? Saying, let's right the ship, Unc. It's time to get back on the winning path here, my man. It's been a tough couple of weeks. We were on a little winning streak, and then it went tits up for a minute here, and now all of a sudden last week was just absolutely crazy. We got Remdog in the room saying, oi! And we've got EQ in the room hanging out with us. What's up, EQ? Good to see you in here. We've got LPX in the room saying, thanks for the content as always, man. Keep plowing through the adversity. That's what we do. Look, it's gambling. Every once in a while, the gambling god, who I call Gambler, he's gonna give it, then he's gonna take it away, and that's just part of the game, is the ups and downs. And when you have those big downs, you got to move past it. You got to be like that closer that has the short memory. Hey, you went out there and you got peppered. They hit a couple balls a country mile on you yesterday. So what? Go out there and mow them the fuck down today. It's your job, and that's my job. So I'm going to mow these fucking bookies down, and I'm taking my money back and then some this week. All you hoes, just watch. We got Yippee-ki-yay in the room. What is up, dude? Saying, behold Weezy, the Greek god of UFC gambling, where chance meets the daring spirit of Weezy. Let's go, you guys. We got a lot of work, so I want to get right into it. 14 fights on this card. Let me bring up the advanced stats for you guys. I'm going to start with the Tiuliulin Medic fight, and I'm just going to move the Oralbai Medic fight over to where I think it's going to be in the order here. But we are going to start with Christian Leroy Duncan going up against Denis Tiuliulin here. And let me just see this one. I'll put it there. Okay, and let's get these stats up here for Tiuliulin versus Duncan. We've got a money line of minus 400 here for Christian Leroy Duncan. Denis Tiuliulin plus 300. We don't have any time props yet for this fight. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be juiced to the under here because Denis Tiuliulin is, he's god-awful, and he doesn't belong in the UFC. So, a highly touted prospect like Christian Leroy Duncan should absolutely mow through him if Tiuliulin had a full camp. And here, Tiuliulin's going to be coming in trying to make weight on 3 days' notice and fight a guy who's just taller than him, younger than him, longer than him, a better striker than him, a better grappler than him, actually more experienced as a pro. If you add the pro and the amateur together, he's even got more fights. He's just, look, there's no place that Denis Tiuliulin offers anything to Leroy Duncan. Leroy had a tough opponent in his first fight. Armen Petrosyan is a tough fight for anybody, and we saw some massive holes in Christian Leroy Duncan's game. For instance, when we watched Christian on the Cage Warriors scene, we see that his anti-grappling is really good. He will get taken down, but once he gets taken down, he's working for sweeps, working for submissions, or trying to get back to his feet. And he always does. He always either sweeps or gets back to his feet. And then he wins the striking battles against these grappling heavy guys because he's the better striker, because he's younger, faster, more athletic, has the much deeper understanding of how striking works, and just the much more diverse toolbox of weapons to go to. But when you're facing a guy like Petrosyan, and you're not necessarily winning the striking battles, the door is wide open to take the guy down and win minutes on the ground. And we found out that Christian Leroy Duncan doesn't have that ability. He does have good anti-grappling, but when it came to, oh shit, it's time to make an in-fight adjustment here because I'm not winning the minutes on the feet, and try to go to the grappling, he actually was unable to take down the guy in the division that has the worst takedown defense in the division. So we found an inability for Christian Leroy Duncan to be able to offensively grapple in order to win minutes. Secondly, we found out that Christian Leroy Duncan is a really good striker as long as he's facing a pitiful striker. But if he's going in there against somebody that actually knows how to strike, despite the fact that he's younger than that guy, despite the fact that he's 4 inches taller than that guy, despite the fact that he has a 9-inch reach advantage over that guy, do you see Christian Leroy Duncan throwing jabs? No. Do you see him throwing teep kicks up the middle in order to maintain distance? No. Do you see him throwing extremely low percentage spinning hook kicks that hit nothing but fresh air? Oh, yeah, you do. You see him throwing dozens of them, and none of them hit, and he winds up missing everything that he throws. He has no idea how to use the gifts that he has, the height, the reach, the athletic ability. He really had no idea how to win minutes or moments on the feet against somebody that could strike their way out of a paper bag. So even though Christian Leroy Duncan, you can't teach the 6'2" for a middleweight. You can't teach the 79-inch reach. You can't teach that explosive athleticism that he has. This guy is clearly a very talented athlete. And the sky could be the limit if he learns how to blend the martial arts and use his athletic ability and use his size, and also use that well-rounded skill set that he actually kind of does have already in order to find his opponent's weaknesses and exploit them. Now, lucky for him, Denis Tiuliulin can't grapple at all. So even though Christian Leroy Duncan, probably wasn't able to take down Petrosian, he probably could get Tiuliulin down because anybody could. I mean, Jun-Yong Park looked like Jordan Burroughs against Denis Tiuliulin. And also Denis Tiuliulin really can't strike either. I mean, he is kind of high volume, but he's got a 44% distance striking defense like Duncan does. But I mean, just keep in mind that Tiuliulin is showing that 44% distance striking defense over a larger sample size and a more diverse array of opponents that aren't Armin Petrosian. So I do like Christian Leroy Duncan to win this fight, but until I start seeing him kind of put some shit together, until I start to see him show a little bit of a game plan, I am not laying minus 400 on this guy. And I actually bet on Denis Tiuliulin versus Jun-Yong Park. I got him at like plus 220 or something. I lost a unit on that. Literally one of the worst bets that I've ever made in my life. And you guys just saw at the beginning of the show, like 9 piss poor bets that I made. Tiuliulin's money line against Jun-Yong Park was one of the worst of all time. I mean, it's easier when you're getting the plus money. You know that you're going to look like a complete asshole some of the time. But man, I felt like a giant asshole for betting this guy because he's just terrible. So the pick for this one is going to be Christian Leroy Duncan to win this one by second round knockout. So there's Duncan. We'll go KO. Round 2 against Denis Tiuliulin. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Yeah, dude, Litz is saying CLD getting a nasty highlight here. I hope he does because I want to see more of this kid. I think that he could really be great, but he's got to figure it out. He's got to start putting it together because that performance against Petrosian showed very poor fight IQ, and it showed a very poor ability to be able to be offensive in the striking against a good striker or offensive in the grappling against a bad grappler. So I think he's got a ton to show and a ton to prove after that first terrible performance. We got Caddy Daddy in the room saying might just have to take fight ends in round 1 on this one. That's not the worst idea because Tiuliulin will throw bombs and you never know. Christian Leroy Duncan showed 40% striking defense in his own right in the Petrosian fight. So maybe Tiuliulin can land something here. So I don't mind if fight doesn't go to decision in under 1.5. Leroy Duncan round 1, round 2. I think that those are all valid spots this week. Yeah, Duncan can't box. I mean, if you're, how the hell are you 6'2" and 78-inch reach and you don't know how to throw a fucking jab? And you're switching stances. So not only are you switching stances, but you can constantly get into whatever stance it is that you need to show the jab and make it work. And I mean, like, he didn't even know how to throw one. It was pathetic. I mean, Petrosian has no reach. And you saw Christian Leroy Duncan have absolutely no idea how to maintain distance, how to keep this guy out of the pocket, and how to use his length in order to achieve those objectives. It was maddening to watch. Yes, steal D by flying, spinning, helicopter knee to the liver. Dude, it's going to be some kind of crazy highlight like that. It could even be like a wheel kick or a spinning hook kick, because he does like he's like a capoeira guy. It looks great in the gym until you get in there and you actually have to get into a fight and the whirling dervish shit doesn't work. It's what I did in the RoboCop fight. Yeah, fight ends in round 1. Nothing wrong with doing that, dude. I think it's a good look. But yeah, we're gonna go with Christian Leroy Duncan to win by knockout in round 2 here. Let's go on to the next fight, which is going to be Charles Energy Johnson at plus 130 going up against Rafael Estevam minus 150. Fight doesn't go to decision here at plus money at plus 160. So let me get these stats up on the screen. Let me get a sip of my beverage here. And let's first start talking about Charles Energy Johnson and the advantages that he has in this fight. So Charles is going to be 1 inch taller, and he's going to have a 1 inch reach advantage. He's also a switch stance fighter against an orthodox fighter, so that's an advantage on paper. Charles has the overall and UFC experience advantages. He has 7 more professional fights than Rafael, 95 more minutes of pro cage time, and that's in 1 less year as a pro fighter. So he's also been the far more active fighter, fighting about 2.5 times a year compared to about 1.25 times a year for Estevam. And Charles also has the UFC experience advantage with 5 more fights, 65 more minutes of octagon time, as Estevam is going to be making his UFC debut on Saturday. Now, Charles will have the striking advantage in this matchup. He's got a negative 0.06 distance striking differential in the UFC with way above average 50% distance striking accuracy and below average 56% distance striking defense. Charles switches stances constantly and has a Muay Thai style where he's light on his lead leg. And when he gets into a flow state, his reads and starts unloading, it's pretty watch because he does take a while to find his way into fights. But once he gets into that flow state and the stances are switching, he starts pressuring, he starts putting volume on his opponent. That's when he shows that brilliance. He flashes that I see why this guy was LFA champion. I see why they brought this guy in to fight Makayev in his debut. But every once in a while, he also shows up kind of flat too. So only 53% of Charles' UFC cage time is spent at distance striking range where Charles does his best work. And if he wants to win this fight, he's going to need to get that number a lot closer to 80%. Now, Charles has fought the much better brand of competition over his pro career. We know very little about Estevam. He's got 11 pro fights, but there's only film on 4 of them. Johnson, on the other hand, was the LFA flyweight champion. He has 5-round experience in 3 different fights, and his conditioning is always top-notch when he has a full camp. Johnson is faced, beaten, and lost to the way better brand of competition, and it really isn't even close. Now, Estevam is going to be 5.5 years younger than Charles Johnson, and he's a very good grappler. He's got a smothering style. He sticks to you like glue. He throws combinations while walking forward to either get into the clinch or enter on his takedowns. His striking is ass. He just uses it to set up his grappling entries because the grappling is where he does his best work. Estevam prides himself on his conditioning and, as he calls it, his big lungs due to years of swimming that he did to overcome asthma as a child. Estevam pushes a grappling heavy pace. He takes you down. He lands ground and pound while looking to advance to dominant positions. Once he gets there, he looks to finish fights with either the rear naked choke, the arm triangle, or with his ground and pound, which he's done 4 separate times. Estevam finishes fights when he gets them to the ground. So Charles is going to have to do everything in his power to keep this fight standing. So something to keep in mind here is that we haven't seen Estevam in the cage for over a year now, since his Dana White's Contender Series win over João Elias. He was scheduled to fight Jalgas in May, but he botched the weight cut. Now, Estevam has fought at 125 pounds since he turned pro at the age of 18, and maybe that cut is getting to be too difficult for him. I want to see Estevam on the scales because, in my opinion, Estevam is going to have to wrestle and grapple relentlessly in order to win this fight, and that won't be possible to do for 15 minutes unless the weight cut is on point and he isn't drained. Charles is a well-rounded fighter, but after the Mikhaev and Durden fights, I think it's fair to refer to this matchup as a classic striker versus grappler archetype. If Charles keeps this standing, he wins. And if Charles can't stop Estevam's takedowns or get up after he's taken down or just get Estevam to fuck off in general, then Estevam probably wins this fight. This is a big step up in competition, though, for Estevam. So not knowing enough about him due to the lack of tape, the lack of high-level experience, and the potential weight cut concerns, paired with the fact that we know from what we've seen on tape that Charles has a massive advantage on the feet, and that forces me to pick Charles Johnson to win this fight. I'll say by decision. If Estevam has a good weight cut and passes this test, then I'll be looking to bet him going forward because I'll be able to trust the fact that he can dominate the grappling exchanges at the UFC level. But until I see it with my own eyes against a UFC level opponent who is more experienced, more well-tested, the better striker, and also a very well-conditioned athlete, then I have no choice to take the Johnson side here and conclude that the plus money on the Johnson money line is going to be the value side. So I'm going to go to Tapology here, and I'm going to pick Charles Energy Johnson to win this fight by decision because I want to see Estevam on the scale before I lay minus 150 on him, that's for sure. And I want to see him, dominate a guy that has never given up against guys that we know are UFC level in Cody Durden and Muhammad Mikhaev that out-wrestled Charles Johnson. So going with Johnson by decision here. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat as we've got Lit saying, this feels like a solid step down for Charles. Fighting for his job, I don't know. I think it's worth the plus money shot. I'm with you there, Litz. I think it's a good spot for him. Estevam could wind up being that guy. He could be that fighter where you're like, man, this guy's smothering. He's Habib-like. And the flyweight division is full of people like that. Because you're 125, you can push that grappling heavy game plan for a full 15 minutes. It's a lot easier to do at flyweight than it is to do at middleweight or light heavyweight. So we're going to find out a lot about Estevam in this spot. But for me, there's just not enough evidence to suggest that he's at the level that have of the guys that have done that to Johnson in the past. Pepe is going with Charles, going against a lot of the sharps, but I think he can outpace Estevam and might look at some round 3 props. I don't mind the round 3 props because we know, now Estevam's got great conditioning, but we know Charles Johnson on a full camp has got great conditioning as well. Former Olympic hopeful in a distance running event called the steeplechase. So yeah, Johnson's got good lungs too, man. Johnson's got good cardio. All 3 of these rounds are going to start on the feet. And Estevam's striking is not good, you guys. So going to be very interesting here. And EQ likes the under 1.5 rounds. I'll bet that's juiced up. I'm not juiced up. I'll bet that's a big plus money number there. That's a very interesting look. But let's get on to this next fight, you guys. According to my banners, I'm going to be breaking down Trey Ogden, the Samurai Ghost, at plus 108, going up against Nick Iron Motta at minus 128. Fight doesn't go to decision on BetOnline for this fight, minus 165. So let's get to the stats here. And let's first start talking about the advantages that our guy Trey Ogden, the Samurai Ghost, has in this fight against Nick Motta. Now, Trey is going to be the bigger lightweight. He's 2 inches taller, and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage over Nick. And Trey has the overall and UFC experience advantages. He's got 4 more professional fights, 60 more minutes of pro cage time, and 2.5 years less as a professional. So Trey has also been the far more active fighter as a professional. Trey also has 30 more minutes of octagon time in comparison to Motta in the same amount of fights. And Trey's a very technically sound and smart kickboxer. He's low volume. He doesn't show KO power, but he mixes up his weapons well. He's got good kicks to all areas on the body, and his check left hook it's quick, it's accurate, and it tends to slow down the output of his opponents. And Trey's grappling game has always been his bread and butter, but we haven't seen much of it at the UFC level. Trey's 11 wins and 3 losses to the submission in his pro career, but he's only completed 2 takedowns in 3 UFC fights, and his fights have taken place at distance striking range over 82% of his octagon time. I don't know if we will see Trey mix in his wrestling so we can put his BJJ black belt to use, but he does have that grappling in his back pocket, and we don't want to forget that it's a potential weapon he can use in this fight. Now, Nick Motta is going to be 3 years younger than Trey Ogden, and Nick is a killer be killed knockout artist. He's 9 wins and 4 losses to the KO in his career, and this dude has power in both hands. Nick's left hook is nasty. We saw him knock out Cesar Balmaceda with that weapon in CFFC, and Cesar's been eating all his meals through a straw ever since that knockout. It was nasty. Nick hasn't shown the best minute winning capabilities at distance striking range yet in the UFC, but he has heavy hands, and he's a solid kickboxer at range who also has a very dangerous head kick to go with the natural power that he does have in both hands. I rate Ogden's minute winning skills at range just a little bit better than Nick's, but I know Nick has way more power, and he's going to be the more dangerous kickboxer at range. So this is an interesting stylistic matchup. Trey Ogden is not just a fighter. He's also a coach and a gym owner. Marathon MMA is his gym, and you can tell when Trey fights that he's very technical and thoughtful about how he game plans for his opponents and executes that game plan in the cage. Trey is well-rounded. He can win minutes on the feet and with his grappling, and he's also shown the ability to win moments on the mat with his BJJ black belt. Motta, on the other hand, started MMA professionally at the age of 18 and was in the tough house in his early 20s. He's very experienced and well-tested for a 30-year-old, and we know this dude has scary power in his hands. His nickname is Iron, in reference to Iron Mike Tyson, and Motta throws his hooks with similar bad intentions. The problem with Motta is that he's been finished in all 5 of his professional losses, and that chin has been cracked several times, and it's definitely in question at this point. Trey is not a murderous power puncher, but at this point in Motta's career, I'm not sure he has to be in order to hurt him. And if he does, that club and sub will be in play. And we know even though Ogden has never been knocked out in his career, he does have 54% distance striking defense in the UFC. And Nick Motta can KO anyone if he touches you with that left hook or that head kick just right. I think violence is a solid look for this fight, especially if Motta goes out there knowing his power is way more dangerous than Trey's, and he disrespects the striking of Ogden, walks through his offerings into the pocket, and just starts swinging hammers. I'm worried about Nick's chin, but I think that's his path to victory here, as the power differential between these two guys is way too much to ignore. I'm going to pick Nick Motta to win this fight by second round knockouts. All right, so where is the Motta fight? It is up here. And by the way, I have no idea what the order is. I was looking on UFC stats to try to get some kind of official order. They've still got the old fights on there. They still got Christian Leroy Duncan fighting Cesar Almeida. They still got Uros Medic fighting Johnny Parsons. So they don't even know what the order is. So I'm going with what I saw on UFC stats earlier in the week. And yeah, so we're going to go with Iron Nick Motta to win this one by KO. Even though Trey Ogden has never been knocked out in his career, he obviously hasn't faced somebody with the power that Nick Motta has. Zell Huber is more of like a distance kickboxer. Like Motta is the kind of guy who takes your head off with one punch. So yeah, going with Motta KO, TKO round 2. But as far as a bet for this fight, I'm pretty much going to be staying away from this one. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Nothing. All right, so let's move on to the next fight. We got Lucie Pudilova at plus 159 going up against Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez. Ailin Perez, a minus 184 favorite here. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus 195 for this fight. So let's first start talking about the advantages that Lucie Pudilova has here, as she's the bigger bantamweight. She's going to be 3 inches taller than Nurmagomedov, and she's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage as well. Lucie has the overall and UFC experience advantages. She has 12 more professional fights. She's got almost 200 more minutes in the pro cage and almost 5 more years as a professional. Lucie also has the UFC experience advantage with 7 more fights and 95 more minutes of octagon time. And Lucie's very durable. She's only been finished once in 22 pro fights, and it was by submission back in 2019 to the bad Shevchenko, Antonina Shevchenko. And Lucie has faced, beaten the better brand of competition over her pro and UFC career, having had 9 UFC fights to only 2 for Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez. Now, Ailin Perez is the more opportunistic finisher as a pro. She's got a 62.5% finish rate in 8 pro wins, 4 knockouts, and 1 submission. And Perez is definitely going to be the more dangerous fighter wherever this fight goes. On the feet, Perez throws with power and purpose. She isn't very technical, but she does have power, and she will throw looking to knock you out rather than to rack up points on the judges' scorecards. Ailin has really good body lock takedowns. She powers herself into range, gets a hold of her opponent, and uses upper body Greco-style takedowns that are very effective and get her into dominant positions almost immediately. Once on top, Ailin is heavy. She lowers that ass of hers down, and she makes you carry her weight, and she lands ground and pound and waits for you to give up your back. She can win minutes and moments with her ground and pound, and she showed that in the Smith fight when she racked up 10 takedowns on 15 attempts and got 11 minutes and 36 seconds of control time. She was even close to finishing the fight a couple of times with ground and pound in the first round. Ailin will be looking to get this fight to the ground and dominate when she's on top, and it appears she's strong enough to achieve that objective. Now, Ailin looked phenomenal versus Ashley Evans Smith. It's hard to know how much we can take from that dominant performance because Smith hadn't fought for over 3 years and may have been showing up for a check. What we do know, though, is that Ailin threw Smitty around like a rag doll and beat 7 shades of shit out of her. Ailin is strong. She bullies her opponents on the cage and on the mat, and she does a really nice job of using her striking to set up her body lock takedown entries. Once she gets to the ground, we've seen her maul her opponents outside of Stephanie Egger with ground and pound. Pudilova showed a massive hole in her grappling game in her first tenure with the UFC, but after her return, we've seen her use her wrestling and grappling games as weapons, finishing that fraud Wu Yanan in the second round by TKO and getting 2 takedowns and 7.5 minutes of control time in the Edwards fight on her way to what should have been a unanimous decision victory, but instead was a bizarre judge's robbery for Jocelyn Edwards. When Pudilova returned to the Octagon promotion, OKTAGON Octagon, she fought Talita Bernardo, who has a similar wrestling and top control heavy style to Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez, and she was taken down and controlled in all 3 rounds and lost a unanimous decision. I think the recent grappling dominance we saw from Pudilova is due more to like the fact that Edwards and Wu Yanan, who by the way is not affiliated with the Wu-Tang Clan, are bottom of the barrel grapplers rather than it being a resurgence in Pudilova's grappling game. Lucie's almost the same age as Ailin. She's a lot more experienced overall and in the UFC. She's well-rounded and she's well-tested, and she's fought the better brand of competition overall. But this new and improved MMA Masters goat shed version of Ailin Perez is pretty scary, and I expect her to be the striker that moves forward, landing the bigger shots, and to be the better wrestler and more dominant grappler in this matchup. Ailin's getting the perfect opponent to fit the style of what she wants to do in the cage. be the bully, and out grapple and out wrestle her opponent. So I'm going to be picking Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez to win by decision. And for some of you guys who are probably saying, why in the hell does he keep calling Ailin Perez Nurmagomedov when her nickname is Fiona, right? It's no longer Fiona, you guys. She changed it. She's now Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez. And this has always been the problem, not just in MMA, but in life, when you allow anybody to give themselves a nickname. You know, a nickname is something that other people give you. You don't get to choose your own nickname. You think I wanted to be called Weezy? Huh? I mean, people called me Weezy back in college because my last name sounds like Louise. Louise from the Jeffersons was called Weezy, and I got stuck with Weezy. I didn't get to choose it. It was given to me. It's a nickname, right? So I had to go with it. I had to grin and bear it. Hey, Weezy, what's up? Hey, good to see you, buddy. You know, you just roll with it. You don't get to choose your own nickname. This is what happens when you get to choose your own nickname. You start calling yourself Nurmagomedov when you're from Argentina. So, you know, that's just a little bit of a tangent I went off on there. But yeah, I'm not a fan of people making up their own nicknames. But Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez by decision is going to be the pick here. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. We got Caddy Daddy saying, Trey just not enough of a threat for me to like that side. I know the chin is glass on Motta's side, but I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, is Trey Ogden cracking that chin? I don't know, man. Remdog said, under 2.5 looks good. Motta doesn't lose or win in the third. Yeah, it's a good point. I don't mind that. You know, I don't mind it either. But we'll see. You know, I gotta see where a lot of these things are going to open up on the other books. Fight Talk Only, my guy in the room saying, Weezy, I had conversations with some buddies earlier about you. You have no idea how much you picked me up when Pogo got sick just by being you. Your words are A1 sauce. I appreciate you, Unc. I appreciate you too, my man. Yeah, Pogo got sick a little bit after Bootsy got sick. And yeah, man, I mean, we love our dogs. I got a dog here right now. That's my cousin's dog. I'm taking care of him while he's convalescing with us after he broke his paw. And my cousin's got like a baby at home and two other big dogs. So the dog was just like getting in their way by, you know, and it was not to be trusted while alone, was fucking with the paw constantly. So at least I've got a dog over here now that I get to love on a little bit. But I appreciate those super kind words, man. They mean a lot. You know, try to be a good person as much as we can and pick other people up when they're down. Pepe Silva saying, I wouldn't trust Perez at this juice. Dog or pass for sure. Yeah, man, I'm not laying the juice on Perez. Let's just put it that way. I am picking her to win, and she's going to be in my DraftKings cash lineup because I just hated what I saw from Pudilova in the Toledo Bernardo fight. I think Perez is going to do a similar type of game plan that Bernardo successfully employed against Pudilova. But yeah, Pepe, I'm not laying the juice, though. I'll tell you that, man. We got James S in the room saying, yo, T.O.Easy, what's up, Jimmy? How's it going, man? Real Fight Pig saying, I follow Ailin on OnlyFans. Half of her content is her training in the gym, and the other half is not safe for work. 20% of the not safe for work is a mix of the two. Interesting. Okay. Wow. Like her grappling in a thong or something like that. That could be really interesting. Yeah, Ailin's got an ass on her. That is for damn sure. I will tell you that. We got Victor saying, I wonder how Habib feels about the twerking Nurmagomedov. If there's one thing that I know about Dagestani Muslim, it's just that they love twerking. They're huge fans of it. So I'm sure Habib, Abubakar, you know, even the late father, what was his name? Abdul Manap. I'm sure they love it. I'm sure they're huge fans of a twerking woman using the nickname Nurmagomedov. They can only love it. Pepe Sylvia saying, I just realized I bet against both of the twerkers on the card, shaking my head. Wow. So you bet on Pudilova plus money, and she's the more experienced, the more tested. She's taller, longer. So there's a lot of reasons on paper to like Pudilova here. So, and then you bet against our guy Jordan Levitt as well. Yeah, Hooper's pace has been crazy lately. So, yeah, maybe they both cash. I'm not laying the juice on Perez, but I'm definitely not laying the juice on Hooper either. That's even more ridiculous juice. Real fight pick saying exactly Weezy. All that to say, she is a gym rat. Her cardio is going to be on point. It didn't look bad in the Smith fight, considering she attempted 15 takedowns and got 10 of them. So that was pretty good. They should put Ailin in Abu Dhabi because she has a Muslim name. Yeah, I'm sure the sheiks would just go absolutely crazy for her. All right, you guys, let's move on to the next one. We got Jeka Saragih at plus 395 going up against Lucas Alexander. And yes, that is correct. Lucas Alexander is a minus 510 favorite in the UFC. And the fight doesn't go to decision for this fight. Minus 240 here. Let's get these stats up on the screen. And let's first start talking about our guy Jeka Saragih here. And Jeka is going to have a little bit of an experience advantage with 5 more pro fights than Lucas and about 5 more minutes of pro cage time. Jeka's a finisher. He's finished all 13 of his professional wins inside the distance. He's got 5 submissions and he's got 8 knockouts. This guy goes out there to kill his opponents and he usually succeeds. Everything he throws is with bad intentions. And if you stand in front of this guy, eventually he's going to land something big. Now, Jeka's striking is fun to watch. He's very aggressive, but he doesn't pressure. He backs himself up to the cage. He lets his opponents come into range. When he's ready, he explodes with massive combinations. Everything is thrown with 100% force. It's meant to take your head off. The spinning back fist that broke poor Pawan Man's face was almost as nasty as the straight right that banished Wong Bin Kim to the land of wind and ghosts. Jeka is not the most technical striker, but he throws with intent, and sometimes that's enough because all he needs to do is land once to change the trajectory of the fight. Now, Lucas Alex, and he's got a killer instinct. Once he hurts you, he swarms. This guy loves to kill people, and I love the throat slash that he does. It's a pretty good thing there. So Lucas Alexander, though, much bigger than Jeka. And by the way, Jeka cutting to 145 for the first time in his career. This fight's at 145. We've only seen Jeka at 155 prior to that. So Lucas is about a half year younger than Jeka. He's going to have a 3-inch height and a 4-inch reach advantage. So that's what they do to you in the UFC. When you move down weight classes, they like to give you the biggest guy in the weight class that you're moving down to be like, yeah, great idea. We got big guys at featherweight too, Jeka. Lucas has 1 more UFC fight. He's got almost 10 more minutes of octagon time in comparison to Jeka. And he's definitely going to be the more skilled and technical striker in this matchup. Lucas is huge for the weight class, and he's a very talented kickboxer. And he uses those kicks to maintain range and stay safe at distance. Lucas, in 14 minutes of distance striking time in the UFC, he's accrued a positive 3.81 significant or distance striking differential with 55% accuracy and an impregnable 75.73% distance striking defense. Lucas stays long. He uses low leg kicks, body, and head kicks to attack out of range of his opponents. He switches stances and has power in both hands. And he's 3-0 to the knockout in his career. And he probably would have finished Ocho Peterson if Ocho wasn't so tough. Lucas stays defensively responsible. If he stays defensively responsible like he has thus far in the UFC, he should easily win the moments and most likely the minutes at distance striking range. And Lucas has the superior strength of schedule at the UFC level, having fought Brito and Peterson, while Jeka's highest level opponent was Anshul Jubilee, who just got his ass shaved by Mike Breeden. So I'd say Alexander is the more tested fighter thus far in their 2 careers. This is going to be an excellent striker versus striker fight. And it promises to be a violent one. All but one of Saragih's fights have ended inside the distance, and I don't see either of these guys initiating grappling exchanges in this fight. They should stand and bang until one man falls, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Lucas is much bigger and longer than Jeka. He's more experienced in the UFC. He's the more technical and crisp striker, and he's faced the better brand of competition, while Jeka is more of a wild card. He's super aggressive and unpredictable. This is great matchmaking and a great way to put two lower level strikers who are trying to work their way up the division here, and putting them in there so that they both get the fight that they want. I'm picking Lucas Alexander to win this fight by second round knockout due to his ability to maintain distance striking range while using his low leg kicks to slow Jeka's movement and while staying safe defensively here. And I think that distance striking defense is going to be very important when you see the numbers turned around, go from 57% for Jeka to 75% for Lucas. So we are going to go here with Lucas the Lion Alexander to win by knockout in the second round. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. We have got Marcus Williams in the room enjoying the show. Good to see you hanging out in here, Marcus. We got my guy Andy Short Round in the room saying, "What's up, Uncle Weezy? I got to stop doing stupid shit like putting Dern in all my parlays last week. Need some locks, Unc. There's no such thing as locks, so I can't give you any locks. And if you're looking for somebody to not do stupid shit like you did last week, you're in the wrong damn place, brother, because I made you look like a genius by only getting fucked over on the Dern bets, my man. I got rinsed on every bet that I made. So we're turning around this week. This is the bounce back week, Short Round. We're coming for the bookies' money. I'm going to beat these bookies with a bag of oranges until I juice those oranges. And then while they're on the ground, internally bleeding, screaming, "Why? Weezy, why?" I'm just going to sit there and say nothing. And I'm going to drink that glass of orange juice above them so that they know that they're not fucking getting the best of me ever again. I've had enough of it. We got Yippee Kaye saying, "Weezy, I'm thinking about putting Jeka on my fantasy team. Am I crazy?" So I've got Jeka as my punt on my DraftKings lineup actually this week. I went with the mid-range guys. I went with Hooper. But basically from Hooper down to Pearce is what I did. 5 fighters like Hooper, Perez, Johnson, Pearce, and Perez. And then I punted with Jeka Saragih because there's some upside there should he get a knockout. Yeah, the road to UFC competition was just so low. Yeah, I mean, like these guys from India and Indonesia and like a lot of the really small up and coming markets. But, just because you're, the best guy in a bad market doesn't mean that you're going to be UFC level. James S saying, "Me and you both." James S saying, "But that's the past. Let's get it. Let's go, man." And Caddy Daddy saying, "I bet over 1.5 in the BSC fight. It's okay, Weezy." Yeah, I beat some line movement there, but I hate when that happens. When when you bet an over and then the fight ends the first 15 seconds, and it's just sometimes when you lose that way, it's easier to laugh at it. It's not easy to laugh when you bet the over 1.5 rounds and you miss it by 3 seconds. That's when you think like the whole world's against you. So yeah, man, let's get it back this week, Caddy Daddy. All right, let's move on to this next fight here. 39 of you hanging out here live. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so that you don't miss out on any of the great content that we have going on here. And please consider leaving me a comment down below. Let me know who your most confident pick is, who your favorite bet of the week is, what your favorite parlay of the week is. I love interacting with you guys in the comments section. But let's move on to this next fight, which is going to be, we got a heavyweight battle here between Mick Parkin at minus 330 going up against Caio Machado plus 270. The fight doesn't go to decision here. Juice to the tits at minus 300 on this fight. So let's first start talking about the pride of England, Mick Parkin. And he is going to be 1 year younger and have a 1-inch reach advantage over Caio. Mick has the UFC experience advantage with 1 more fight and 15 more minutes in the UFC cage. Mick's well-rounded for a heavyweight. He's got solid conditioning. He's got good output. really technical offensive and defensive striking, good clinch work, and he can grapple as well. Mick seems to be really putting it all together at the very young age of 28, especially for a heavyweight. This kid is a very promising prospect, in my opinion. Mick's stand-up in the Pogues fight looked really solid. Bisping and Felder were raving about his technique. He stays behind a nice jab. He keeps his hands high. He moves his head off the center line at distance when he throws his right hand, and his low leg kicks against orthodox fighters are really good. Pogues is a really crisp boxer with fast hands, yet Parkin outlanded him 92-34 at distance. He showed a positive 4.23 distance striking differential. Excuse me, guys, with 61% accuracy and over 72% distance striking defense. He basically put on an offensive and defensive clinic at distance and showed how ready he is to strike at the UFC level. And Mick has shown off a functional grappling game thus far in his 7-fight pro career. His short-lived, high-paced war with Neves on Dana White's Contender Series illustrated that when he does get taken down, Mick knows the fundamentals behind getting back to his feet. Neves got 2 takedowns against Parkin, but he only managed 18 seconds of control time on those 2 takedowns, while Mick also got 2 takedowns of his own, and on the second one, he easily got to Neves' back and sunk in the rear naked choke. Mick has a good top game. He's got solid ground and pound and a position over submission approach that's going to serve him really well at this level. Now, Caio Machado is the southpaw in this southpaw versus orthodox matchup, which is an advantage on paper and might take away Parkin's ability to stay behind the jab. If you know, it's tough to do it against to jab somebody up when they're in the opposite stance. And Caio has the overall experience advantage, as he's got 3 more pro fights, 70 more minutes of cage time, and 2.5 more years as a professional. And Caio's a well-rounded fighter. He has a black belt in Muay Thai. He's got a black belt in kickboxing, and he's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a 2-time Brazilian Muay Thai champion with 2 wins by submission, 4 wins by knockout, and 2 wins by decision. Caio's powerful striking. He's got opportunistic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a solid chin and good conditioning. He's only 29 years old, and I think he's ready for the UFC. He's a dangerous kickboxer. He's 4-0 to the knockout in his pro career. He has durability and power and a varied attack. He loops his punches and can be kind of predictable, but he throws with power and purpose, and he can trust his chin while swinging hammers in the pocket and outlast you. Getting into that kind of a fight with Machado is dangerous, so Parkin better resist that temptation and stay technical on the outside. And Caio was shown to be an opportunistic submission grappler as a pro. He's 2 wins and 0 losses to the submission in his career. Both of those wins came by way of armbar. He got a really slick one the second time he fought Lee Mean after getting reversed and finished with an armbar against Lopez with 1 second left in the round. He had Lopez mounted, and when the 10-second clap went off, he sold out for the armbar and got it quick. And it was tap or snap for Lopez, so he had no choice. So Caio's opportunistic and slick with his grappling, and his takedown defense is solid, and he can win minutes as well as moments from top position. So these guys are both solid. They're young prospects in the UFC's heavyweight division. Mick is a very impressive prospect. I thought he looked so clean and polished versus a good fighter in Pogues in his UFC debut in London. Now he comes across the pond for the second time to fight Caio Machado, who will be making his UFC debut fresh off his Dana White's Contender Series win over Kevin Slafarski. Both these guys are well-rounded and dangerous. Both have good gas tanks. Both are durable, and both guys have finished at least 75% of their wins inside the distance. Mick Parkin has never lost, and Machado has never been finished, so time props could be tricky for this fight. On the feet, I really favor Parkin's technical kickboxing. He's way more polished and defensively responsible, and his punches are way faster and straighter to the target. I think Caio has the slicker and more opportunistic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, but I doubt he'll be able to get this fight to the ground if a wrestler the quality of Jamal Pogues couldn't even come close. I think Parkin is a very special prospect with a polished, well-rounded game, and his win over Pogues showed me he can put together a clean 15-minute performance and win minutes and not take unnecessary chances. I also think Machado is a prospect who could have a high ceiling. He's also well-rounded. He's only 29 years old, and he's been tested at a decent level on the regional scene in Canada, but I still feel like we need to see how he performs against guys that are UFC level and better than his opponent, Slafarsky, on DWCS. And Parkin's going to be a very step up for Caio, in my opinion. I have to pick Parkin. I don't see any holes in his game, and I think he's very close to a finished product already at his age. I'm picking Parkin to win this fight by decision and trusting Caio's durability here. But if Caio tries to make this a swang and bang war, I could definitely see someone getting served. I'll pick Mick Parkin to win this fight by decision, and I think we see another clean and measured performance by Mick in this spot. All right. So Parkin versus Machado. I think this is a good fight. I think both of these guys have got a pretty good future. I actually was kind of impressed with what I saw from Machado on his regional scene footage. It's low-level competition, but the guy's pretty good everywhere, and he's young and getting better. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Should be an easy win for Parkin, says Presidente Pedro. I hope so, because I got Parkin parlayed up here. Machado was a nice cash in DWCS, but I wasn't expecting him to get a contract for fighting a bear carpet. That's the thing, Caddy Daddy. That wasn't his fault. Slafarsky had nothing for him and just wanted to hold him up against the cage. And whenever Machado got space, he tried to finish the fight. But that guy, Slafarsky, just wasn't there to fight, So, and I think that sometimes, these guys, it depends on what division you're in. You're going to have a much better chance of getting signed with a lukewarm performance if you're a heavyweight, if you're a women's strawweight, if you're a women's bantamweight, because those divisions need fighters, while if you're a bantamweight and you come out there and you look okay, they don't need an average bantamweight. That's already too stacked of a division. Let's see. Yippee Kaye saying, I've got Mick in this one and a few parlays. What say you? Yeah, I got him parlayed up too, Yippee Kaye. I was really impressed by what I saw from Mick in the Pogues fight. I picked Pogues to win that fight, and I've actually got a pretty high opinion of Jamal Pogues as a UFC heavyweight. Yeah, it was a bad one. It wasn't a good fight, but it wasn't Caio's fault. It was Slafarsky's fault for sure. Parkin isn't 54 years old. I think you're okay, Weezy. So what Caddy Daddy is referring to is this guy, Caio Machado, has 2 wins over the Grampinator, Lee Mean. Let me get this up here for you guys. So if we go to fight card here and we go to Caio Machado, he's got wins over, you see Lee Mean here, 11-15, Lee Mean 11-14. This is, it's Gladiator, but he's actually called the Grampinator on, I believe it's on, if we look at his tap out. Yes, Lee Mean, the Grampinator, 13 wins, 17 losses. That man is 56 years old. Look at him. He doesn't have any fat, and he looks like he could bench press a truck, and he's actually handsome, too, with a beautiful head of hair. So, Lee Mean, the Grampinator, 2 wins for Caio Machado over the Grampinator and Lee Mean. So, keep that in mind. In my book, that still means something, you guys. So, anyway, let's move on to this next fight, though. It is going to be Chad Anheliger going up against Zacharias Johnson. We've got Chad, the underdog here at plus 155. No way. Jose Johnson at minus 180. Fight doesn't go to decision for this fight, is at minus 135. So let me get my notes up here, and we're going to first start talking about the advantages that Chad Anheliger has in this spot after I take a sip of this delicious beverage. That's good. That's good. All right. So Chad Anheliger's advantages. He's got a small UFC experience advantage with 1 more fight, 25 more minutes of octagon time. Yeah, 2 fights, 28 minutes compared to only 3.78 minutes I didn't think that was mathematically possible for a second. Chad has really unique striking. Anheliger at distance, striking range, he reminds me a little bit of Dominic Cruz. He keeps his hands down. He moves in and out and side to side, and his punches and kicks come from odd angles and with a different cadence. Like the way that he looks on the feet just kind of reminds me of Dom Cruz. Chad Anheliger is 7-0 to the KO in his career, and he definitely does his best work at distance striking range, and he aims to keep fights there. Chad has got 2 knockdowns in 2 UFC fights, so we know he's dangerous there, and he loves to find that one big shot that changes the trajectory of the fight. Now, Zacharias Johnson is 8.5 years younger. He's 6 inches taller, and he's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage. So massive measurables advantages here for Johnson over Anheliger. I mean, 8.5 years younger, 6 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage. Those are all big advantages on paper. And even though Jose's 8.5 years younger, he actually has more pro experience than Chad does. Jose has 5 more pro fights, 45 more minutes of pro cage time, and 5.5 years less as a professional. So not only is he more experienced, but he's been way more active as a professional. Chad fights just a little more than once a year, and now that he's almost a 37-year-old bantamweight, I wonder why he's taking this much time between fights. There's a nice experience and youth advantage here for Johnson, which is a nice combination of attributes to have. And Jose has got really good striking. He's got a Muay Thai base, and he uses all of his available weapons. Hands, kicks, elbows, knees in the clinch. Jose's tall, long, unusually powerful for someone as skinny as he is. He's got 8 wins and 1 loss to the KO in his career, and he does prefer to keep fights standing like Chad does. Both of these guys are dangerous strikers, but I think Jose has the advantage there due to his youth, his length, his power, his speed, his variety of weapons. Jose's power is something to behold. When he knocks out dudes, the ambulance arrives. Platino power on full display for the fighting pride of the Dominican Republic in Jose Johnson. And due to his length, Jose has a tricky submission grappling game. Even though he's 2 wins and 4 losses to the submission in his career, Jose has proven that even though most fighters will be looking to take him down, that he can throw up submissions and not make it easy to win minutes on the ground against him. Jose finished Mo Miller from his guard with a cheeky triangle choke. So if you take this dude down and don't mind your P's and Q's, he can catch you in a submission. Now, there's a lot to like on the Jose Johnson side here, in my opinion. We've seen Johnson struggle with wrestlers and BJJ players who want to smother him and not let him strike, but Chad is not that kind of an opponent. At distance striking range, Jose is 6 inches taller. He's got a 7-inch reach advantage. He's 8.5 years younger. He's faster. He's more powerful, and he's absolutely brutal in the clinch with his knees and his elbows. Add to that he's 8.5 years younger and more experienced overall. I'm left thinking that unless Chad surprises us and shows off some offensive grappling here, that he's going to be stuck at range with a much more dangerous and diverse striker. Chad is a very good boxer. He has power. He's difficult to prepare for due to his unusual style and movement, but he's going to have a really hard time finding his way into the pocket against Johnson, who's so long and so tall. Chad is going to have to pressure quite a bit to close the distance, and I could see him walking onto something or ending up in the clinch getting taken apart by Johnson's elbows and knees. I think no way Jose Johnson winds up being the first guy to knock out Chad Anheliger as a pro, and I'm picking Johnson to win this fight by first round knockouts. The Lobo Solitario, Jose Johnson, in round 1 by knockout. In Anheliger's last fight against Hailey Alateng, which for some reason was over a year ago. I mean, why are you taking a year off unless you're injured at the age of 36? That doesn't make any sense. He's got to go now. So a year-long layoff, and Hailey Alateng came this close to finishing him in the first round. He just didn't show any killer instinct, actually. So somebody like Jose, who I think even hits way harder than Hailey, and Hailey hits hard, I think he's going to have a chance to finish him. And I'm going with a little bit less likely of a result here with Jose Johnson getting that first round knockout. We've got yeah, that's right. Dominican Republic, stand up, baby. We got oh wow, and he senses a nasty submission coming from Johnson here. Yeah, dude, the guy's got a submission game. And if we do see Chad grapple, Chad's been finished 5 times by way of, or I think 4 or 5 times by way of submission as a professional. So but most of those came a very long time ago when he was a much different fighter. So we'll see what happens here. Chad didn't look great in that Ailin fight. Oh, yeah, in the Haley fight. Yeah, he didn't. He didn't. But he showed what he always shows, which is a lot of toughness, a lot of durability. The guy's got no quit in him. He loses first rounds on the regular, but he's got a lot of grit. He'll never quit, and he can get better as the fight goes on. And he will eventually find that big shot if you box with him long enough, because he's so unusual on the feet. So, yeah, he did not look good there. And now he's not getting any younger. You know, this is a 37-year-old bantamweight. That is a bad age for that weight class. All right, you guys, let's move on to this next fight here, as we've got my guy Jonathan Pearce, JSP, at -128, going up against Joanderson Brito at +108. Fight doesn't go to decision here. Juice to the tits at -210, over 67% implied probability there. So, this one is got the honor of being called your Uncle Weezy's Ding Dong Donnybrook of the week. This is going to be an absolute banger. These are 2 guys who always come to fight. Very exciting finishers. I cannot wait for this fight. So let's first start talking about Jonathan Pearce here, as John is the taller fighter. He's 4 inches taller than Joanderson, and he's a switch stance fighter against an orthodox, so that's also an on-paper advantage. John has the overall and the UFC experience advantages with 60 more minutes of pro cage time, 2 more fights at the UFC level, and almost 40 more minutes of octagon time. And Pearce will have the superior conditioning in this fight. We've seen Joanderson slow down later in fights due to how explosive and powerful he is. Pearce is the opposite of that. John slowly works his way into fights and dials up the pressure and the volume as the fight goes on. Pearce is a nightmare to deal with in rounds 2 and 3, especially if you're a front-loaded fighter like Brito with a tendency to slow down later in fights. And John has solid striking metrics. His distance striking differential is a little below average at -0.24, but his 40% accuracy and 61% defense are both slightly above average. John uses his length well. He has nasty front kicks, and he throws nice 1-2s down the middle while switching stances, pressuring and confusing his opponent. John is at his best when he blends the wrestling and the striking, but he's not out of his depth at distance striking range. And John is excellent, relentless wrestling combined with the conditioning and the desire to push a grueling wrestling-heavy game plan. 57% of Pearce's 58.71 minutes in the octagon is spent in control time positions, and Johnny's winning over 85% of those positions, out-controlling his opponents 48.7% to 8.3%. John gets a whopping 5.88 takedowns per 15 minutes on 10.22 attempts. John's pace is what makes him such a dangerous fighter, and in my opinion, the most difficult part of John's pace to deal with is how he blends the pressure between the striking and the wrestling attacks that he has. It's the up and down, scrambly nature of the way JSP wrestles that drains the gas tanks of his opponents and eventually breaks them later in fights. And John Pearce has fought and beaten the better brand and more experienced UFC competition at the UFC level. Now, Joanderson Brito is almost 3 years younger, if you believe his birth certificate. I mean, like, Joanderson Brito is listed at 28 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if he was 40. This is the guy that looks like, you know, when you were 12 years old, you could have been friends with this guy and he could have easily went to buy beer and not even had to show an ID because he looked like he was 27 at the age of 12. So, yeah, maybe Brito's younger, but he does have a 1-inch reach advantage, and I know that has been measured. So, Joanderson is an opportunistic finisher wherever the fight goes. He's finished 13 of his 15 pro wins inside the distance, and he's an equal opportunity finisher with 6 submissions and 7 knockouts. So not only is he a consistent finisher, but also a diverse one. And on the feet, Joanderson is very difficult to deal with because he brings pressure, pace, and volume. He walks forward like a zombie. He stays very busy while doing so, attempting 16.7 distance strikes per minute, which is 4.64 more than the divisional average. And he lands almost 7, which is 2.19 more than the divisional average. In addition, Brito lands a knockdown on 2.04% of the distance strikes that he lands. So not only is he busy, but he's also powerful, landing 1 UFC knockdown and finishing 2 of his 3 wins inside the distance by way of knockout. And Brito is also a very opportunistic submission grappler. He's 6 wins and 1 loss to the submission in his career, and we saw him get a cheeky standing back take in the Lucas Alexander fight and finish with a first-round rear naked choke. Brito's fights take place in control time positions 66% of the time, and he wins 63% of those positions. Brito gets 3.64 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he allows 1.46, and he outcontrols his opponents 41.6% to 24.4%, showing slightly below average grappling efficiency due to his 0% takedown defense on 2 attempts against. We also saw Brito get takedowns on his Dana White Contender Series fight versus Diego Lopez and managed to stay safe from his submission attempts while on top, which was impressive. So, as I mentioned, this fight has the honor of being named Uncle Weezy's Ding Dong Donnybrook of the week. These two are going to go at it like 2 rats in a shoe, and we, the fans, will have the thrill of enjoying this beautiful violence. I do see this fight going Brito's way early and Pearce's way late. If John can weather the early storm against Brito, who's explosive and opportunistic wherever the fight goes, then he can turn up the volume, pace, and pressure when Brito slows down in the second and break him in the third. And I think that's the most likely result due to how durable JSP is proven to be in the UFC. He has an ironclad chin, great conditioning, and the knack to break his opponents in the second half of fights. I'm a huge fan of both of these guys due to the aggressive killer be killed styles they fight with. They both trust their durability. They both take pride in dismantling their opponents. But I'm going to trust the size, the durability, the conditioning, the pace, the pressure, the volume, the wrestling, and fantastic ground and pound that Pearce brings and pick him to win this ding-dong of a fight by 3rd round attritional KO. My guy, JSP here. Coming back from a torn ACL from what I hear. So this is something that is going to be interesting to see if we get the same Jonathan Pearce that we're used to seeing, if he's 100% ready to go, or if he's taking this fight maybe a little too soon and not ready to come back yet. So we're going to find that out because Tubarão Brito is an absolute nightmare of an opponent. And if he lands big, he can absolutely get you out of there. And he's got a really slick submission game too. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for JSP. But I know that this guy is special. And I know that his unique brand of pace, pressure, and output is very, very difficult to deal with, especially if you're the archetype of fighter who does slow down later in fights, who doesn't manage your output, your energy output well. And that does fit the description of Joanderson Brito. So Pearce, 3rd round KO, gets us almost to the main card here. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Brito is like the Brazilian baseball pitcher from Benchwarmers. His performance controlling Lopez in Dana White's Contender Series is aging well to his grappling abilities. There's no question about that. And Victor saying, I really need Pearce to survive round 1 and take over in round 2. I did take a stab at Brito by sub in round 1 since Pearce puts his neck out there to be grabbed. Not the worst way to go. And I do think that he's a lot more likely to get subbed than he is knocked out just due to how durable this guy is. Got that round 1 sub at plus 1,500, which is ridiculous. And it is absolutely ridiculous. That's a fat number, Vic. I hope it doesn't cash, but that's a good number, and we're always here to play the number. All right, you guys. So we've got that all up now. We're going to go to Uros Medic versus Myktybek Oralbai. All right. So we've got the stats here. I don't know what Oralbai's birthday is, but he is listed at 25 years old. So from what I could tell, he's like born somewhere after October. Um, because of just what I saw from fights and what ages he was listed at in those two different fights. It looks like Oralbai is still 25 years old, but I'm taking a guess. I put it as January 1st, 1998. His birthday is probably somewhere around there. But Oralbai's got the experience advantage here, in addition to being almost 5 years younger. But it's going to be Medic, who's definitely the bigger welterweight here, 3 inches taller. He's a southpaw, but Oralbai younger, having a 3.5-inch reach advantage here, and he's got a little bit of an experience advantage. 60 more minutes in the pro cage, but it's Uros Medic who's been fighting at a higher level for longer, having 4 UFC fights in the Dana White's Contender Series fight, while Oralbai was cutting his teeth in LFA. So both of these guys are good finishers. Oralbai with a 91% finish rate. He's finished 10 of his 11 wins, and Uros Medic has finished all 9 of his UFC wins. These guys only have 2 combined losses between the two of them, and one of them was a finish by submission. Uros Medic's only loss in his career coming by way of submission to Jalen Turner. So while this is on the feet, I do see Medic being the better striker, but Oralbai has flashed some power on the feet, and his striking is not bad at all. Oralbai knocked out Hayward Charles in his most recent fight with a nasty uppercut. Definitely a highlight reel knockout right there. So that was an interesting one. Oh, by the way, I never even got the lines up here. Oralbai is the favorite at -170. Medic the dog at +140. We don't have any time props yet. But we know what Medic is on the feet. He's got a positive 0.85 distance striking differential, way above average, 52.5% accuracy. He's landing a knockdown on 3.7% of the distance strikes that he's landing. So Oralbai is a wrestler and Medic is a striker. And that's what this fight really does come down to. Now, Oralbai does have good striking on the feet, but if he stands and strikes with Uros Medic voluntarily, that's probably not going to go well for him. What will go well for him is if he tests Medic's grappling game. Now, Medic has shown 80% takedown defense, but on only 5 attempts against, and it's against Ailin Cruz, Jalen Turner, Morales, and Semmelsberger, guys that just aren't known for their wrestling. So we're going to find out a lot more, because this guy Oralbai is somebody who wrestles nonstop. If you go from the Jalen Fuller fight backwards in his career, that's where you're going to see this guy doing his best work. But Uros Medic is the more powerful striker. He's the more clean striker, the more technical striker. He's going to be taller than this guy, and he's going to have more power on the feet. But Medic's challenge in this fight is that he's going to have to keep this fight standing, and Oralbai can really wrestle. But Medic has fought the better brand of competition. He's not the one taking this fight on 3 days' notice. He's going to be the much bigger guy here. And he's got a similar level of experience, but definitely a much better a UFC experience advantage here. So while people are betting Oralbai, I get it. The guy's good, and he's a very good wrestler, but doing it on 3 days' notice at the UFC level against somebody as dangerous on the feet as Medic, who's long, who can catch you coming in with a knee or an elbow. I do like Uros Medic to win this fight. I'm going to pick him to win by decision because we've never seen Oralbai finished, and he's been in 5-round fights before. And he does seem to have the cardio to be able to push a grappling heavy game plan. The guy trains out of Ulu Kyrgyz and also out of Team Alpha Male. So my guess is, and I'm pretty sure it's right, is that he has to be in California. I mean, you don't take a 3-day notice fight if you're in Kyrgyzstan. I mean, you're not even getting a visa to get out of the country in time. So I think Oralbai was already in the area, and maybe he was staying ready, hoping that somebody would drop out, because not a lot of people are going to take an Uros Medic fight on 3 days' notice. But Oralbai stepped up and raised his hand and said, I'm here and I'm ready for this fight. So This is going to come down to Oralbai's game plan. I think it's going to be grappling heavy here. He's taking the fight on short notice. He's going to have to get Medic down over and over and over again. And Medic was preparing for Johnny Passons, a guy that wasn't going to take him down. So, I mean, I kind of like the plus money on Medic here, but you know, the Oralbai is a kind of a bad matchup for him because I could see him going to the wrestling and testing something that we haven't really seen Medic be tested in at the UFC level. So I don't like the matchup for Medic. I won't be taking the plus money on him, but I'm also not laying minus 170 on a debutant coming in on 3 days notice with a massive striking disadvantage in this spot. So I'll go with Medic. I'll say he wins it by decision. But I'm going to be staying away from this fight pretty much as a whole, you guys. So I'm going with Uros Medic to win this one by decision, but we'll see what Myktybek Oralbai has in store for us here on Saturday night. And Caddy Daddy saying he's got to go Medic here. The short notice, the size disadvantage for a wrestler is definitely a tall order. Yeah, it is. It is. So we'll see how it goes. And, you know, Oralbai has shown some good striking in the last 2 fights, but against who? You know, against guys that Medic would have murdered as well. So we're going to have to just see how this one plays out. I'm going to be out of the pool for this one. And we got Moises Mercer saying Trump 24, 2024, US. Yeah, he was in the crowd there. Good to see him with that beautiful head of hair showing up to the UFC events. Always good to see Donald Trump in the house. And Real Fight Picks saying, is Medic your dog pick, Weezy? No, he is not. Let's move on to this next fight as we're on to the main card here now. And it is going to be Luana Pinhiero at plus 195 going up against Amanda Ribas minus 230. Fight doesn't go to decision. Plus money here at plus 140. So let's get these stats up on the screen. And let's first start talking about Luana Pinhiero. So Luana has a rare attribute for us for a female strawweight: power. Luana has landed a UFC knockdown, and she's 2 wins and 0 losses to the knockout in her pro career. We saw Luana land knockdowns against Sam Hughes and on Dana White's Contender Series versus Stephanie Frausto. Well, Luana's got power in both hands. So when you combine that power on the feet with her grappling prowess, you have a very dangerous fighter. And Luana is a BJJ and judo black belt. She, like Amanda, was born on the mats. Her dad's a judo master. She started training judo at the age of 2. Whenever Luana gets into the clinch, she gets her trademark throw, which is the uchi mata, or the whizzer kick, as the wrestlers like to call it. And she has a habit of dumping these hoes right on their heads when she does that. Luana's averaging 3.06 takedowns per 15 minutes with 50% accuracy, and she's winning almost 71% of the control time positions in her fights. Now, Amanda is almost 1 year younger, and she's making the move back down to strawweight after a 3-fight stint at flyweight. So she's going to be the bigger fighter here with a 1-inch height and a 4-inch reach advantage. And Amanda has the overall and the UFC experience advantages with 3 more pro fights, 50 more minutes of pro cage time in 2 more years as a professional. Amanda also has the UFC experience advantage with 6 more fights and 65 more minutes of octagon time. I really like Amanda's conditioning. She possesses the gas tank to push a high volume pace for the entire 3 rounds, which is important because Pinhiero has shown that she will slow down later in fights due to throwing all her strikes at 100% power and always going for high amplitude judo throws. Slowing down against Ribas in the 2nd and 3rd round of fights is a bad recipe for success against her. So I think Amanda's conditioning, output, and pace are going to be big advantages for her here. And Amanda has a really good is a really good minute winner in the distance striking exchanges. She's got a positive 2.58 distance striking differential with 40% accuracy and almost 70% distance striking defense. Amanda stays busy, attempting 17.39 distance strikes per minute, which is 4.18 more than the divisional average, and she's landing 6.88, which is 1.81 more than the divisional average. Amanda throws and lands way more volume than Luana, and she's more accurate and defensively responsible at distance. I think Amanda wins the minutes and Luana probably wins the moments at distance striking range. Amanda's also a black belt in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so there's probably not going to be much of a grappling advantage here either way. But Amanda's never been submitted in her pro career, and she's been in there with some top-notch grapplers like Mackenzie Dern and Virna Jandiroba. So Amanda's definitely the better minute winner in the grappling exchanges, as she outcontrols her opponents 35% to 8%, winning almost 82% of the control time positions her fights have been in, while showing 89% takedown defense on 18 attempts against. I think Amanda's more likely to win minutes in the grappling exchanges in this matchup. And Amanda's fought and beaten the much better brand of competition in the UFC, as she's got 6 more fights, 3 of them up a weight class, and her 9 UFC opponents for Ribas have a combined UFC record of 59 wins and 38 losses, while Luana's career competition has a record of 16 wins and 22 losses. So this is definitely a step up in competition for Luana Pinhiero here. Now, Luana will be fighting on her birthday. So if you believe that's a plus EV trait, then that's something to keep in mind here. Luana Pinhiero's birthday, November 18th, 1992. She will be turning 31 years old on Saturday when she's in the cage. So something to keep in mind here. I think Pepe Sylvia is one of the guys that says fighting on your birthday is definitely plus EV, and you were getting a fat plus money number here on Luana Pinhiero. So something to keep in mind if that's an analytic that you watch. Now, this is a high-level strawweight fight, and both of these ladies are top-notch, lifelong grapplers with black belts in multiple disciplines. I think this fight comes down to the minute winning of Ribas, both on the feet and at distance, moment winning of Pinhiero with the power she possesses on the feet. 3 of Ribas's 4 career losses come by way of knockout, and it's impossible to mention Ribas without talking about the fact that she's chinny for a 115-pounder. Luana has real power in both hands, and it's absolutely possible she can find a big shot that ends the fight. That being said, Amanda gets better as the fight goes on, and Luana slows down. So if Luana doesn't find that big shot in the first or early in the second, I think Amanda wears her down with pace and pressure and wins the later rounds, and maybe even comes close to a third-round attritional finish like she almost had in the Jandiroba fight. I'm going to pick Amanda Ribas to win this fight by decision, but I think the Pinhiero finish-only prop at plus 120, and for even a cheekier, wider prop here, Ribas round 3 could be decent ways to play this fight. But the official pick is going to be Amanda Ribas to win this fight by decision. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We've got Remdog in the room saying live bet Ribas after she gets dropped in round 1 and realizes she's in a fight. That's happened before, just like it happened in the Jandiroba fight. And Victor played the Pinhiero finish only prop, 0.85 units at plus 120 to win 1 unit. Hopefully she survives round 3, since Amanda has a way better gas tank. Yeah, she does have a way better gas tank and a ton more output. So this is another one of those fights, kind of like Brito Pearce, where it's going to be Pinhiero early or Ribas late, most likely. But Ribas has got some power of her own. She lands some big shots. She's accurate. She's fast. You just got to worry about her getting, touched on that chin, because it's been cracked before. All right. Let's get on to this next fight, which is, wow, this is going to be a fun one, you guys. We got the debut of Payton Talbott, and he is going to be going up against Slick Nick Aguirre, the fighting pride of Oswego, Illinois. Oswego, stand up. Your boy Nick is making his second UFC appearance. So let's first start talking. Oh, let's get the lines up here too. Payton Talbott. Can I interest you in Payton Talbott at minus 800, ladies and gentlemen? How about Nick Aguirre at plus 550? The fight doesn't go to decision here. Minus 210 for this fight. So let's first start talking about Payton Talbott. He's 2.5 years younger and 1 inch taller, and he is a switch stance fighter, fighting a southpaw, and that is a statistical advantage. Payton has 33 more minutes of pro cage time compared to Nick. And this kid is extremely durable. He's absorbed a ton of flush shots so far in his career, and he eats them like flapjacks. This kid trusts his ironclad chin, keeps his hands down, walks forward like a zombie, drowning his opponents in volume. I've always said that the rare combination of top-notch conditioning, an ironclad chin, pressure, and a high output of striking and grappling is the best archetype of fighter to bet on. They break their opponents and win minutes of the fight until they do break them. Payton fits this mold beautifully, and I think because of that, he's going to be very successful in the UFC's stacked bantamweight division. Payton does his best work on the feet. He's constantly pressuring and throwing in combination. He has power in both hands, and he varies his attacks well, and he switches stances a lot. Payton's not good defensively. He moves his head well, but he keeps his hands down and he walks forward with no regard for his own safety because he has supreme confidence in his chin, and so far it's held up really well. Payton will want to keep this fight standing because Nick does his best work on the mat. Payton showed excellent takedown defense against Reyes Cortez Jr. on DWCS, stuffing 16 of 17 takedowns. So he does a greater job of using his wrestling in reverse to keep fights standing, where he drowns his opponents in pressure and volume. Payton has a high school wrestling background, but he mostly uses it in reverse to stay standing. However, he's shown some excellent anti-grappling on his tape and the ability to land nice ground and pound when he does get on top. He's never won by submission, only knockout, but his wrestling base has really come in handy for him, keeping fights where he's at his deadliest, at distance striking range. And Payton has the much better strength of schedule as a pro. Nick mostly crushed cans on the regional scene, while Payton fought high-level regional scene guys. I feel that Payton is the much more tested fighter of the two thus far. Now, Nick Aguirre is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here. He's got a 100% finish rate, does Nick. He's got 4 submissions and 3 knockouts, and Nick is a slick grappler. He's 4 wins and 0 losses to the submission in his pro career, and like Payton, he has a wrestling background. Nick qualified for the state tournament in Illinois his senior year, so he has the ability to get fights to the ground and finish them, which is very important in this matchup. Payton is a killer on the feet, and he's too durable for Aguirre to hurt him, so he's probably going to have to get this fight to the ground in order to win minutes and potentially moments here. So this kid, Payton Talbott's going to be a star. His confidence is through the roof. He's undefeated as a pro and as an amateur. He's very charismatic. He's got a fan-friendly style of fighting. He already reminds me of so many big stars, the way he carries himself, the confidence he fights with, the way he talks to his opponents in the cage, and the rare ability to be able to trust his chin. He's going to go far in the UFC, and Nick is the first step up that ladder to stardom. Nick has to grapple in order to have a chance to slow Payton down. But we saw a state champion wrestler out of Fight Ready get stuffed on 16 to 17 takedown attempts and only managed 2 minutes and 53 seconds of control time for his effort. In the 12 minutes and 7 seconds of that fight that took place at distance, Payton landed 137 significant strikes. That's 11.3 distance strikes landed per minute. What a pace. Combine that pace with the conditioning for days, the ironclad chin, the power in both hands, and the wrestling background, and you have one scary fucking opponent. I'm looking for Talbott to break Aguirre in the 3rd round by way of TKO. Payton Talbott, stand up. KO, round 3. Reno, Nevada, stand up. Washoe County, stand up. Reno Academy of Combat, put on the map now, thanks to this young man, Payton Talbott, who's going to be making his debut on Saturday, showing off that beautiful head of hair and that fantastic combination of attributes that it has that makes him such an exciting, fan-friendly style of fighter. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this kid make his debut here. And Slick Nick Aguirre, he's got one tough row to hoe in this fight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Remdog saying Luana will stay safe at distance after she tires. Yeah, she might be able to. She could stay safe at distance, but Amanda's gonna make her work. That's what she does. Usman says seems kind of wide. Yeah, I mean it's minus 800. You can call almost any minus 800 line wide, especially when it's a debutante, that with only 6 pro fights, I'm not going to be laying the minus 800. But Payton Talbott round 3, I think that's something I'm going to be playing. And I'm waiting for FanDuel to open props for this fight. Looking to take a stab at Talbott second, third round KO combo. Yeah, I'll be there with you. Too bad we can't track those. But yeah, man, it's such a good look, dude. I think that's the way he wins this fight. And Caddy Daddy likes the over 1.5 in this fight. Talbott is a volume finisher, and Slick Nikagiri's never been finished. So I also have the over 1.5 in this fight, Caddy Daddy, and I have it parlayed up with Mick Parkin's money line, and then one more money line that we'll be talking about shortly. So let's move on to the next fight. 51 of you guys hanging out in here live with your Uncle Weezy. Appreciate each and every one of you. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe so you don't miss out on anything going on this channel later on. Leave me a comment down below, and please consider joining the Patreon to support the work and also get access to stats that will make you make better gambling decisions in the long run. So now we've got Chase the Dream Hooper at minus 200 going up against the Monkey King, Jordan Levitt, who's a plus 170 underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here, sitting at minus 110 for this fight. Let's get these stats up on the screen. And we're going to first start talking about Chase the Dream here. Now, he's 4 years younger than Jordan, 4 inches taller, and he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. So really nice measurables advantages for Chase Hooper in this spot. Chase has the overall and the UFC experience advantages. He's got 3 more professional fights, 65 more minutes in the pro cage in the exact same amount of time as a pro. These guys started their pro careers on the exact same day. Chase also has 1 more fight at the UFC level and 30 more minutes of octagon time. Now, Chase is a pace, conditioning, and output machine. Chase attempts 16.39 distance strikes per minute. That's 4.9 more than the divisional average. He lands 4.68 clinch and ground strikes per minute. That's 1.56 more than the divisional average. 7.2 takedown attempts per 15 minutes. That's 3.02 more than the divisional average. 1.94 submission attempts per 15 minutes. That's 1.51 more than the divisional average. And he gets 1.56 reverses per 15 minutes. That's 1.4 more than the divisional averages. So the pace this kid pushes in every aspect of the game is next level. And if you can't match that pace or even attempt to keep up with it, Chase will eventually melt you on the feet or on the mat. And Chase is actually getting to be a decent striker because he's utilizing his best attributes, conditioning and durability, to push a pace that his opponents can't handle and absorb whatever they throw at him. He pressures constantly while attempting 16.4 distance strikes per minute, landing 7.18 of them at almost 44% accuracy. Chase doesn't have any knockdowns, and his distance striking defense is a pitiful 42%. But because he has a reliable chin and he never stops throwing or walking forward, he can outlast his opponents and break them with attritional damage. And the grappling game is where Chase does his best work. He's unusually tall, long, and flexible for the weight class, and he has a very aggressive submission over position brand of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that's also very difficult to deal with if you don't have the conditioning to push a pace. Chase spams submission attempts, attempting 1.94 per 15 minutes, and he's 5 wins and 0 losses in his career to the submission. Both these guys are very dangerous grapplers, but Hooper has the ability to grapple at that pace for the full 15, while Levitt has shown the propensity to slow down later in fights. Now, Jordan Levitt's advantages, Jordan has surprisingly good distance striking metrics. He's got a positive 2.61 distance striking differential with way above average 61% accuracy and 63.3% distance striking defense. He even landed a knockdown against Victor Martinez due to clinch knees, and he's finished 2 of his 4 UFC wins by way of KO. The second knockout was a vicious slam KO of UFC veteran handsome Matt Wyman. Not sure if Matt has woken up from that KO yet, and my most sincere prayers go out to him and his family. Jordan uses his kicking game to manage distance and throws a ton of calf kicks and oblique kicks while he's at range to keep his opponent out of the pocket. Like Chase, Jordan's bread and butter is the grappling game. He has a high school wrestling background, and he has a very unusual and aggressive style to his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. Jordan is 6-1 to the submission in his career, and almost 65% of his UFC octagon time takes place in control time positions. Jordan is probably the better wrestler in this matchup. However, Chase squirms like an earthworm when you get him down. So I'm not sure Jordan is able to keep Chase down even if he gets him there. And Jordan has fought the better brand of competition at the UFC level, according to my metric. And in particular, Jordan's wins are far more impressive than Chase's. Chase's 4 wins are over Daniel Tamer, he's the bad Tamer, Slippery Pete Barrett, Felipe Colares, rest in peace, and Nick Fiore. If you add up their UFC records, those 4 wins for Chase Hooper, you get 3 wins and 12 losses. The combined records of the guys Jordan beat, Matt Wyman, Matt Sales, Trey Ogden, and Victor Martinez, is 12 wins and 14 losses. So those wins do rate better according to my metric. Now, this is definitely a fun fight. Grappler versus grappler, and both guys are less than 29 years old, and they're both improving their overall MMA skill sets. Both these guys came into the UFC as pure grapplers, but since they're both young and dangerous grapplers, they've found ways to make their striking attack fit into their overall MMA skill sets and make it work for them. We just saw Levitt get a first-round KO versus Victor Martinez, and Chase Hooper is fresh off a performance where he beat 7 shades of shit out of Nick Fiore over 3 rounds, landing 149 significant strikes in the process and almost finishing the fight at the end of the first round. The biggest factor I see playing out in this fight is Chase's conditioning being able to push a pace that Levitt can't handle. Chase is piss poor defensively and will leave openings early that Levitt can exploit. However, if this fight gets to the second round and Jordan slows down, he's fucked because Chase pushes a pace that never stops, and combined with the pressure on the feet and the constant scrambling, sweep, and submission attempts on the ground, I see this fight finishing inside the distance. Either Jordan Levitt by an early club and sub, or Hooper breaking Levitt with his volume in round 3. But my prediction for this fight is going to be Chase Hooper by third round submission, and I bet the fight doesn't go to decision for 1.1 units at minus 110 for this fight. So we're going to go with Chase the Dream Hooper to win by submission in round number 3 here, breaking Jordan with his pace, pressure, and conditioning. But this is going to be a really fun fight, and I'm looking forward to the Monkey King versus the Dream. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Oh, we got the Cuban Assassin in the room. Cuban Assassin saying, Weezy Wheeze, you should invite old Levitt to come dance while you DJ. He's a good dancer, I'm hearing. Well, I believe he is. If you can do that dirty dancing thing where the coach holds you up and you kind of hold yourself in that swan position, that shows some good dancing fundamentals, and I'm sure he could dance. And yeah, we got to just get the mixer. We're going to get a GoFundMe going to get this mixer fixed so that I can start DJing again. We got Usman Anjum saying, did you hear the Levitt baby narrative? Yes. Jordan Levitt's wife is pregnant. She is due 4 days after the fight. But Jordan said if she goes into labor on the day of the fight, he's going to be with her. So something to keep in mind if you're a DraftKings player, this might be a fight that you might want to dial down your exposure just a little bit too, because there is going to be a probability if Jordan's wife goes into labor that this fight gets scrapped after the card starts. And there's a lot of time. We got 14 fights, and this is going to be the 12th out of 14. So that means we're going to have 6 hours after this card starts for Jordan Levitt's wife to potentially go into labor and scrap this fight. So it's a very good idea that Usman brought this up. I thank you for bringing that up because I didn't have that in my notes. And yeah, it's a very important thing. Real Fight Pig saying, so Chase is going up a weight class. He already went up a weight class the last fight. I think it might even be the last two fight. No, the last fight for Chase Hooper was up a weight class at 155. So Jordan doesn't beat better grapplers than him. That's true. Yes. We got Real Fight Pick saying Chase going up is interesting. Yeah, the second fight, though, that he's been up at 155, and I think he's just going to do way better there because he doesn't have that crazy weight cut. He's growing into his body, and since, output is such a big part of his game, conditioning then becomes a big part of it. We got Kiwi Brew saying, God, I was so early, I ended up late. He came here yesterday, which would normally be the time. He's saying Jordan's wife, Jordan's beard, laughing my ass off. He's got 2 kids, man. He's just an interesting, different dude. He's not gay. He goes in there and he gets wins at the UFC level. I'm a big fan of Jordan Levitt. Looking forward to seeing him fight on Saturday. All right, you guys, let's move on to the co-main event of the evening. It's going to be Michael Morales at -320 going up against the Celtic Kid, Jake Matthews, plus 270 is the underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here, and -180. So let's get those stats up on the screen, and let's get the notes up, get a sip of the beverage. And we're going to start talking about Michael Morales first. Michael is not only 5 years younger, but he's the much bigger welterweight at 1 inch taller, and he's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage here. Michael, like Jake, has been a lifelong martial artist. Both of his parents are black belts, and Michael's mother is a high-level competitor on the world stage. Michael made his pro debut at the age of 18. He's still undefeated with a spotless 15-0 record, and he's finished 12 of those 15 wins inside the distance, 1 submission, but 11 knockouts. And Morales is a KO artist. On the feet, he stays long. He works behind a fast, crispy, and accurate jab, and his right hand lands heavy. He has natural power in all his attacks, and I still have no idea how this giant human being makes 170 pounds, and I wonder how long he'll be able to continue to do so. That size brings power to his strikes as he's landing a knockdown on over 2% of the distance strikes that he lands, and 11 of his 15 pro wins come by way of knockout. Not only is Michael winning the moments with his power at distance striking range, but he's also winning the minutes with a positive 1.85 distance striking differential with 46.5% accuracy. Michael stays busy, attempting 13.3 distance strikes per minute. He lands 6.18. Those are both far above the divisional averages. And his 52.6% distance striking defense needs a lot of work, as his opponent, Jake Matthews, is a lot more defensively responsible at range. Now, Michael doesn't use his grappling often, but the ability to go to it if he doesn't like how the kickboxing exchanges are going is definitely there, as we saw in his Dana White Contender Series fight against Veretennikov. In that fight, Michael showed off his wrestling, getting 4 of 8 takedown attempts and racking up 5.5 minutes of control time while landing 15 significant ground strikes. Michael was a national wrestling champion in Ecuador, and he obviously has a judo background as well, so Michael is capable wherever the fight goes. And Michael's UFC wins, although there are only 3 of them compared to 12 for Jake, actually rate better than Jake's UFC wins thus far. Even though Michael only has 3 UFC fights, the names he fought in Giles, Fugit, and Griffin rate favorably with the guys Matthews has beaten. And if we look at Jake Matthews' wins, he does have 1 really good win, and that's over Li Jingliang. You can see the win over Jingliang right here. But then the other wins, Deshaun Johnson, Wagner Rocha, Akbar Areola, good win over Johnny Case, Bojan Velikovic, Shinsho the Animal Anzai, Rostam Akman, Emil Weber Meek, Diego Sanchez, Andre Fialho, and Darius Flowers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of this guy's 12 UFC wins. These guys are not even with the promotion anymore. But he does have a good win over Li Jingliang here. And the losses come to James Vick by submission. They come to Kevin Lee by knockout, to Andrew Holbrook by split decision, to Anthony Rocco Martin by submission, to Sean Brady by submission, and to Matthew Semmelsberger. So he's losing a really good competition, though. So we kind of got to find that area in the middle. Like, what's the highest level of opponent that we're going to see Jake Matthews beat? Now he's fighting this guy that's younger than him, that's taller than him, that's got a massive reach advantage over him, that's got a big power advantage over him, that's probably the better wrestler too. Submission grappling, I'm definitely giving to Jake Matthews. Experience, you definitely give to Jake Matthews. So, and both of these guys have been, fighting since they were very young. But anyway, Jake Matthews, he's got big overall and UFC experience advantages over Morales. He's got 10 more pro fights. He's got 130 more minutes of pro cage time, and he's got 5 more years as a professional. Jake also has 15 more fights at the UFC level and over 170 more minutes of octagon time. Jake also turned pro at the age of 18, and he's been in the UFC since 2014 when he was 19 years old. So we've watched Jake grow up before our eyes in the octagon. Jake's a well-rounded, well-tested mixed martial artist. He's dangerous wherever the fight goes, and in his UFC career, he's got 5 wins by submission, 2 by knockout, and 5 by decision. He can win minutes with his striking, wrestling, and top control, and he can win moments as he's landed 5 knockdowns and finished 2 wins by way of knockout, and he's submitted 5 opponents, and 4 of those are by rear naked choke, so he can also take your back. Jake is a dangerous veteran with a well-rounded skill set, and Jake has solid UFC distance striking metrics. He's got a positive 1.14 distance striking differential with 39% accuracy and a really good, impregnable 68.6% distance striking defense, which is elite. Jake is low volume for the division, but he counters well. He's got a nice check left hook, and he's landed 5 UFC knockdowns, and he lands them on 1.17% of the distance strikes he lands, so he does flash power. And Jake is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and if you let him get to your back, he can win minutes there and finish with the rear naked choke. Jake averages 1.71 takedowns per 15 minutes. He gets his takedowns at a 41% rate, which is above average for the division. 43% of Jake's fights have taken place in control time positions, and Jake has won 62% of those positions. So Jake can find ways to exploit his opponent's weaknesses wherever the fight goes. And Jake has got 18 UFC fights to Morales's 3. So obviously over the long term, Jake has fought the much better level of competition on the aggregate. Now, these are 2 very talented and well-rounded mixed martial artists squaring off, and it's a very good co-main event. People forget that Jake Matthews is only 29 years old with a wealth of experience at the UFC level. Those 200-plus minutes in the octagon are very important because Michael is still developing his overall MMA game. So fighting a cagey, well-rounded veteran like Matthews, who's still in his physical prime, is going to be a tough test for Morales. That being said, this kid Morales does look to be a special prospect. He's huge for the division. He's only 24 years old with the confidence of a lifelong martial artist with a spotless 15-0 record. He has an unusual combination of speed and power. And even though he rarely initiates wrestling and grappling exchanges, he's proven that he's strong and technical in those spots as well. And he can go to it offensively if the situation calls for it. These guys remind me a lot of each other, but they're in 2 different stages of their respective careers. And the biggest difference I see between the 2 are the natural gifts of size, length, athleticism that Morales possesses that you don't see in the former lightweight in Jake Matthews. We recently saw Matthews struggle with the power and athleticism of Matt Semmelsberger as he got dropped 3 times in that fight. And I think Morales is just a bigger, more explosive version of Semmelsberger. I like Michael Morales to win this fight by decision. I see him winning the striking exchanges by landing the bigger, more impactful shots, and I think he can outmuscle Matthews in the clinch and wrestling exchanges should he want to mix things up. So I'm going to pick Michael Morales to win this fight by decision. There we go. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat about that. It's those jazz hands that Kiwi likes on Jordan Levitt. Short round in the room saying, could Morales be the parlay buster of the card? He's fighting a tough, Jake Matthews is not somebody you want to take lightly. That being said, short round, I hope not. Because the third leg of your Uncle Weezy's parlay that starts with Mick Parkin's money line and secondly goes to the over 1.5 rounds in the Talbott versus Aguirre fight, finishes off with Michael Morales' money line, which I got at like minus 240. So I beat a lot of movement there as it's already minus 320. But Jake Matthews is no pushover. He's good wherever the fight goes. But like when it comes to Jake, it's like, obviously Morales is more special. Obviously Morales has the higher ceiling. Obviously Morales is bigger, longer, more athletic, faster, more powerful. You just see everything there, but we're going to have to still see. And the wins are good. The Fugit win is pretty good, but the Giles win is very good. And the Max Griffin win is very good. And Max Griffin has fought better brand of competition than what Jake Matthews has on the overall. And he's very durable as well. So we could see Jake getting finished here, but my pick is going to be Morales by decision. Look at the shiny template. Great stuff, Weezy. Yeah, man. I love my stats, and we've always got them up here, and we've got, the matchup stats, but we've also got each fighter's, career stats here. So if you want to take a closer look into the numbers, that's always available here on your Uncle Weezy stats. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. We're 2 hours in, and we can finally get 14 fights in here to the main event of the evening, which is going to be Brendan All-In Ailin at minus 450 going up against Paul Craig at plus 350. The fight doesn't go to decision here. Juice to the tits at minus 800. So Brendan Ailin is on a 5-fight winning streak here, and he is going to be the younger guy. He is going to be the more experienced guy overall. He is going to be the guy with the better striking, and he's going to be a guy that has a very comparable grappling game. Paul Craig needs this fight on the ground. His striking is okay. You look at the numbers, and he's actually got a positive distance striking differential. He's very low volume, though. But he's got 37.5% accuracy, 59.5% defense. Nothing to write home about there. He does have one knockdown in 16 UFC fights at the UFC level. He's 3-4 to the knockout, though. He's 6-1 to the submission, and he's 0-1-1 to the decision. So Paul Craig definitely gets his wins when he finishes. He's finished every single win that he's ever had in the UFC. He's finished. Now, Brendan Allen's been finished 3 times in 5 losses, and he's been finished in both of his UFC losses. So I see why this fight doesn't go to decision here is at minus 800. Brendan Allen should be able to win the minutes on the feet at distance striking range. But, Paul Craig is just so dangerous. Even when you look at the how he beat Jamal Hill, he got an overhook on Jamal Hill's right arm standing. He was in the clinch, got that overhook, and then when he realized that he had the hook in tight, he just jumped to guard. And then he started working that straight armbar series, and he'll work from that straight armbar. Once you start looking to get out of that, that's when he slaps on the triangle and he finishes you. But sometimes Paul Craig can finish with the straight armbar before he progresses to that triangle choke. So, Paul Craig by submission or Paul Craig inside the distance, especially when you're getting him here at such a big plus money number, it feels like a system bet, right? Because Brendan Allen is the guy who will shoot 0 takedowns against Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland, but he'll take down Andre Muniz. You don't really know what this guy is going to do, but you do know that if you want him to take the easy way out, he's probably not going to do that. Brendan makes decisions that people don't like sometimes in the cage. His in-fight decision-making seems to be based more on confidence, the confidence of a guy that's 10-2 at the UFC level, the confidence of a guy who's fought a combined record of opponents at the UFC level of 79 wins and 58 losses. So it's not like this guy's out there crushing cans. Brendan Allen is beating Bruno Silva, Andre Muniz, Jotko, The Malkoun fight was very close. Could have went either way. A legend like Sam Alvey, the smiling one, and he's lost to the current champion in Strickland. He's lost to another really good counter striker in Chris Curtis. But this is something where I can definitely see Brendan landing the bigger shots on the feet. And if he gets to the ground, and can pass the guard of Paul Craig needs to be either on top or in his guard. Outside of that, he doesn't offer much offense, and he can actually be dominated on the ground. I mean, we see here that Paul Craig has 69 takedown attempts. Paul Craig's opponents only have 14. So that's like he's attempted 69 of the 83 takedowns that have been in his fight. So like about 80% of the takedowns, but he's only getting 28% of the control time positions. So Paul Craig is a very inefficient grappler. He doesn't win minutes with his grappling. And we've seen Brendan Allen win minutes on the feet with his striking. So even though the metrics show a better distance striking differential for Paul Craig than they do for Brendan Allen, I believe that Brendan Allen is the minute winner on the feet and the moment winner on the feet. And I think that if this fight does go to the ground, Allen will be smart enough to stay out of Paul Craig's guard. But, it's Brendan Allen, so I don't necessarily know if we can trust him to do that. So at minus 450, no thanks. Will I be taking a small shot on Paul Craig by submission or Paul Craig inside the distance? Yeah, I think I might do that. If I can get it plus 450 or something like that, maybe I'll throw a quarter unit on it, because that Paul can lose the minutes. One overhook, one triangle, one Darce choke, and it's over. And Brendan Allen will put himself into some bad spots. So I'm going to pick Brendan Allen to win this one. I think he wins it probably because these guys have lost by knockout a lot more, right? Craig's been finished 5 times in his career. Brendan Allen's been finished 3 times. So these guys have been finished a total of 8 times in their career. 6 of them are by knockout. 2 of them are by submission. So these guys get finished by knockout a lot more. So I'm going to be going with Brendan Allen to win this fight by second round knockout. And that does it, you guys. That got us through all 14 of these fights. We've done our work. So we're going to save our picks here. And let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. He didn't beat Malkoun. That was a terrible decision. Yeah, I agree. I had Brendan Allen as the ass shaving of the week that week. That was not a good pick. I got bailed out with the decision. But yeah, I thought he lost the minutes to Malkoun wrestling. Allen makes decisions, fucking stupid choices. I see it. Yeah, he knows. Yes. So here we go, guys. Let's get right into the underdog pick of the week, which is going to be the Bootsy Collins, as you know, Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week. This week is going to be the Charles Johnson money line at plus 120. Estevam is about 150 here. Minus 150 is the favorite, about 60% implied. And I just think at 60% implied, you don't want to be making a ton of assumptions. One of the assumptions that you have to make if you're laying minus 150 on Estevam is the weight cut goes well. When the guy botched his weight cut in his UFC debut, that's not the one you want to botch, right? So if he's botching a weight cut in his UFC debut, the most important fight of his life, chances are that weight cut is going to be difficult for him every time going forward. What happens if Estevam has an adrenaline dump after round 1? What happens if the nerves get to him? What happens if he, like so many other people making their UFC debut, just shows up flat? These are all things that can happen. But every round starts on the feet, and Charles Johnson will be the more noticeably technical, busy, and dangerous striker while this fight is on the feet. So I think that the people that are on the Estevam side, they might cash this bet, but I think they're making a ton of assumptions. And if I'm going to make that many assumptions, I would much rather get the plus money number than lay minus 150. Charles Johnson, the taller athlete, the faster athlete, the more athletic guy, the better striker, and he's fought the way better brand of competition, and he has 5-round experience. So I'm going with the Charles Johnson money line as plus 120 is the Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week. which leaves us with one more order of business. That is Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. So who's it going to be, you guys? Who do you guys think should be Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week this week? We're looking for somebody that's not just going to win, but win violently. Going to knock somebody out or submit them. Going to break them late in the fight. Something where it looks dominant, where it looks classy, where it looks powerful, where it looks like, wow, that dude really shaved that dude's ass. That was a dominant fucking victory, and your Uncle Weezy called it. Who should it be this week? Who's going to go out there and shave some ass? He backed CJ, but he would prefer 5 rounds. Yeah, I would prefer 5 rounds too, but that's not going to happen here. So 3-round fight. We'll see if Estevam can get enough control time here in order to get this on the judges' scorecards. But he's not just going to have to do it. He's got to get him down, and he's got to, stay there and land ground and pound, because it's hard to keep Charles Johnson down. He kept getting up with Durden. He kept getting up with Makayev. And those guys have got phenomenal conditioning. And Estevam supposedly does too. But if the weight cut, if the nerves, if the adrenaline dump, if any of the things that can happen to a debuting fighter go wrong for him here, I think it's going to be too tall of an order. Kiwi Brew says Pearce should be the ass shaving of the week. AKA Short Round saying Brito going to get his ass shaved in round 3. Presidente Pedro says the minus 400 favorite Christian Leroy Duncan. We got Victor de Jesus. He's calling for Platino power of Zach Warius Johnson. And we got Usman Anjum saying JSP. We got Remdog saying Ailin Nurmagomedov Perez. All right. I love it, you guys. I love it. But this week, I'm doing it, man. You can't slow down later in fights against Jonathan Pearce. And if you don't get him out of there early, he's going to turn up that pace on you, and he's going to break you late. I'm going with Jonathan Pearce to shave the ass of Joanderson Brito and make it look classy, make it look fundamental, make it look nasty by breaking this man and showing him that pace, not power, is the more dangerous weapon in today's UFC. Jonathan Pearce to shave the ass of Joanderson Brito is Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. 2 hours and 12 minutes in, we broke down all the fights, all 14 of them. We gave you a dog pick of the week. We gave you Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. I only have 2 tracked bets thus far. They are the 3-leg parlay of Michael Morales to win, Mick Parkin to win, and the over 1.5 rounds. Those 3 lines come out to plus 181. It's a 3-unit bet. It was not supposed to be a 3-unit bet. What had happened was I put it in for 1.5, received an error message. So I put it in again on Bet Online, received another error message. And then this time before entering it again, I decided I better refresh the screen, and then realized it wasn't an error message, that the bets did go through. So supposed to be 1.5 units. Now it's 3. I still think it cashes. 3 units to win 5.43. Parkin money line, Morales money line, over 1.5 rounds in the Talbott Aguirre fight. Also got the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 110 for 1.1 units for Levitt versus Hooper. And I'm going to be adding some Jonathan Pearce late round props, a Chase Hooper 3rd round pop, a 2nd and 3rd round prop for Payton Talbott. I'll be looking to play some sprinkles on some of these round props, and keep an eye out on the Patreon. I will post all the rest of the track bets this week. I appreciate all 46 of you guys for still sticking around here. 2 hours and almost 14 minutes into the broadcast. Do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up on your way out. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Leave me a comment down below, and please consider joining the Patreon, where you can get access to all the stats that you saw here today that will help you make better gambling decisions in the long run. If you are a UFC gambler and you're looking to not just follow somebody else's picks, but kind of learn the game on your own and give yourself the analytical tools to make better decisions, you got to come to my Patreon, because that's where you're going to get access to the best stats that are out there right now for the money. So please consider joining the Patreon and supporting the work. I appreciate all of you guys. We've got Victor saying he loves it. Zero Mieto says he agrees with the Pearce pick. Let's go, JSP. Short round loves it. JSP is the man. Kiwi says, cheers, appreciate it. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to go put timestamps on this 2 hours and 15 minutes in. Let's all stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 82. And you can come right back here to Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel on Friday, where I will be giving you out another greasy 4-leg parlay. We hit the one last week, so we're looking to make it 2 in a row. So make sure you join in for the greasy 4-leg parlay on Friday, and then we will enjoy the fights on Saturday. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the fights, and we will see you on Friday.